Hi, this is Mrs. Clark, and this is my video on writing an equation of a line from a graph. You'll see that I've already written down the steps, so if you could pause the video real quick and write down those steps, then come back together and we will do the examples. Alright, let's go. So, the first step here says to locate 2 points. So if we look at our first graph, I'm going to do the one on the left first. You'll notice there are 2 points darkened in right here. There's going to be some times where you see a graph and you don't have any points that are filled in for you, and you're going to have to find the points. So because our first step is asking us to locate 2 points, if you didn't have points darkened in for you, what you're going to do is you're going to look for specific places where the line crosses the corners of the boxes, and those are going to be places that you can mark points. If the line is not crossing on the corner of the boxes, where the boxes intersect, then that's not a real point in that situation. These are a little kind of fuzzy to see, but you can definitely see it more clearly when you're looking at a graph that is better quality. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to locate our 2 points. I'm going to start on the left one because that's where I read the graph left to right, and I have to find the slope. So remember, slope is our m, which is our rise over our run. It indicates the steepness of the line, and so the way I find that is by looking at my change in y over my change in x. And so I start at the left point, and in this case I'm going to rise up. So I'm going to rise up 1, 2, 3 boxes. So that's a +3 for my rise. So my change in y is a +3. I'm going to run 1, 2, 3 boxes to the right, and then I'm going to hit the second point. So I'm going to stop. So my change in x was also a +3. I need to reduce my slope. I can divide these both by 3. And when I do that, I get 1 over 1. And I can simply reduce that to just 1. So my slope is 1. Now I can also find my slope using the slope formula. If you wanted to write down the coordinates of the point and you wanted to do that slope formula, which was y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, you could always do that as well. But since I have the boxes in front of me, I can just count them. So that's step 1. Locate 2 points on the line and find the slope. So my slope is 1 for this line, which makes sense. It's a +1 because the line is going up as I go left to right, which is increasing, so it should be positive. So the second step says locate where the graph crosses the y-axis. So here is my y-axis going up and down. Here is my line, and where this line meets the y-axis is right here. So this point is my b value. So if I'm looking at my origin, 0, 0, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4 at -4. So that means my b value is -4. If I were to look at that point in its coordinates, it would be 0, -4. So that's how I find the y-intercept. So my b is -4. That's the important part here. Okay. So I have my m equals 1, and I have my b equals -4. Make this a little darker. And the next thing I have to do is step number 3. Substitute m and b into y equals mx plus b. So that means my -1 is going to go here in place of my, or my +1, sorry, is going to go here in place of my m, and my -4 is going to go here in place of my b. So I'm going to write that down here in the equation line. So y equals, m was 1, so I'm going to put 1 in front of my x, plus b, I can write plus -4, because that is my b. M is this, b was this, and that's how I figured that out. I can also write it, I don't have to put this plus -4, I could just put -4, that's okay also. I also could write it in a little simpler of a way. I could start with my y equals. Instead of 1x, I can just put x, because if I just have an x by itself, that's a 1x. And instead of plus -4, I could just write -4. So as you can see, there's lots of different ways to write your answer. You just have to make sure you're writing it one of these ways. Alright, so let's do the second one. So if I look at the second one, again, the first step is to locate 2 points. So again, this one is darkened in for me, and we did that here because the lines are kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to see where exactly the points cross the boxes. So we filled them in for you for this one. So we're going to start at the left one, and first thing I'm going to do, step number 1, is find my slope. So starting at the left one, this time I have to go down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So since I went down, falling down is a bad thing, so that's a negative 6. And I'm going to go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 also. But now that's a positive 6 because going to the right is positive. So my slope for this one, my change in y over change in x, my falling down was a negative 6, so that goes on the top because my rise or my fall goes on the top. My run is a positive 6 because that's on the bottom. When I go to reduce negative 6 over 6, I can divide them both by 6, but the top will come out to negative 1 and the bottom will come out to positive 1, which reduces overall to a negative 1. So m equals negative 1 in this case. So this is a decreasing line. That means I could also go down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, down 1 over 1, keep going all the way down every time I'm hitting the line. So I could have used this point, this point, this point, this point, this point. All of those points would have been fair points to use when I'm finding my slope. Alright, next to find our y-intercept. So where is this line crossing the y-axis? Well, it's hitting right here. So that's going to be our b value. Our y-intercept is going to be 0. This time it's 0, 2 because it's up 2. So my b is equal to positive 2 in this case. So I'm going to go to the third step. Oh, I'm sorry, that was off the camera. Here we go. My y-intercept was 0, 2. So that means my b is 2. And now I'm going to just go and fill that stuff into the equation part at the bottom. So I'm going to start my equation with y equals. I fill in my m next. My m was negative 1, so I'm going to put negative 1x. I'm going to fill in my b next. My b was a positive 2, so I'm going to put plus 2. And the only other way that I could write this if I wanted to write it a little more simpler is I can take that negative 1 and just make it a negative x plus 2. Either of those answers would be accepted, but if you want to go to the simpler route, you can use the ones on the bottom. So when b is a positive number, it's a plus 2. When b is a negative number, I can do a minus 4, or I can do a plus negative 4. But you don't need to write this plus if you don't want to. You can definitely just write it in this simpler version. Okay, so what you're going to do next is you guys are going to do some practice that looks very similar to this, except for the graphs that you're going to use do not have dots filled in for you. So you're going to have to think about, let me show you real quick, this first example, you're going to have to find places where it crosses the boxes perfectly. So if I zoom in real quick so you can see this. What would be good to think about is the fact that the y-intercept is always going to be a good point to use because it's most of the time it's going to be a solid number. So like right here, for instance, is a 3, so I could use that as a point. It's definitely crossing the y-axis right there. And then if I follow down, it's not really crossing there. It's not really crossing there or there or there. But when I get to the end of this arrow, it's crossing here. So I could use this point and this point to count my slope. So you're going to have to practice finding those points on the line and darkening them in so that you can count your slope from one to the other. Sometimes you're going to find lots of choices. Some graphs you're only going to find 2 on them. 2 because the graph just isn't big enough to see more of them. So if you have to do it on the computer screen, you're just going to look and count your boxes on the computer screen and write your answers down on a piece of paper. If you have the worksheet or are able to print the worksheet, you can do it right on the worksheet. All right, please let me know if you have any questions. Feel free to go back and watch anything again. And go ahead and glue this into your notebook. Thank you.